Hello. Hello. It is with great reluctance that I am releasing these presentations, but it is also out of complete necessity. I personally liked Kristi Noem. However, I can no longer stand by and witness all of the great injustice that is happening in Pennington County, South Dakota, and Governor Noem is fully aware of all of the injustices that are happening, and she is standing by. So I took these quotes from Governor Noem's second inaugural address on January 7th, 2023. Now, she was just elected to governor for the second time, and she herself wrote this speech. The reason that I bring up this speech is because she's saying how, as a Christian, and she's talking about how in the book of Daniel, God puts leaders into place and it is God who removes them. However, Kristi also said that it is the responsibility of leadership weighs heavily on her or on those who are tasked with it, especially during conflict or difficulty. Kristi then bragged, or Governor Noem, that it is an honor and a trust that she is humbled by, and there is serious work to be done in the next 4 years. Now understand that Governor Noem had just come through a period of leading South Dakota for 4 years, and she did make great strides in her the way that she handled South Dakota, but at the same time, you cannot stand by and brag about protecting freedoms, creating opportunities for families to thrive, and knowing full well that if you are an ethnic minority or Native American Indian, that your family will not thrive, rather you will be completely prejudiced and biased against. And also if you're any kind of female-owned business. Now, Governor Noem, on January 8th, 2021, released an executive order authorizing the South Dakota Constitution to uphold the law. During this executive order, Kristi Noem banned marijuana from the state of South Dakota, and she used the South Dakota Constitution, Article 4, Section 3, as her jurisdiction. If you look at this jurisdiction that she quoted, she said that anytime something is happening where it is against the constitutional or legislative mandate, that she will enforce compliance or restrain violation of any constitutional or legislative mandate. Here is a copy of her executive order because she cares greatly about marijuana. And in this executive order, she revoked the law that was passed by the voters during the last election in 2020 to legalize marijuana in the state of South Dakota. So Governor Noem is fully aware of her ability as a governor of the great state of South Dakota to call into justice any act or violation of the Constitution. However, she refuses to defend families. Now, the purpose of this presentation and all of the subsequent ones that I will be releasing are case after case after case after case. And so I aim to back everything up with facts, which is why we're going to look at this next one. Now, statistics compiled by the South Dakota Department of Social Services say that although American Indians comprise less than 9% of South Dakota's population, 52% of the children in the state's foster care system are American Indians. So in other words, an Indian child is 11 times more likely to be placed in foster care than a white child in South Dakota. So one makes you automatically believe that American Indians are really, really bad at raising their children, correct? However, as I will show you next, the child custody hearings typically lasted fewer than 5 minutes. Some were done in 60 seconds, and the state won 100% of the time. Well, that doesn't sound very bad, does it? Not at all. However, they won 100% of the time. So in 2013, the ACLU filed a class action on behalf of the Oglala Sioux tribe, the Rosebud Sioux tribes, and all Indian families living in Pennington County, South Dakota, which challenged the state's child removal procedures of Indian children. The defendants were the presiding state court judge of Pennington County, Jeffrey Davis, the state director of the Department of Social Services, Lynn Valenti, the Pennington County Department of Social Services employee, Luann Van Hoonick, and the state attorney who was filing the petitions, Pennington County Prosecutor Mark Vargo. The lawsuit was filed in U.S. District Court for the District of South Dakota in Rapid City. Honorable Jeffrey Viken, Chief Judge of the United States District Court for the South Dakota Western Division, found all defendants guilty. The question is, guilty of what? They found that all of the defendants that I just named, who are the very people taking these Native American children away from their families and flooding the foster care system with these poor children, failed to comply with the law. They specifically failed to comply with the Indian Child Welfare Act, which is a federal law that governs how and when a Native American Indian child is to be removed from his house, and due process of law. Judge Viken wrote that Indian children and their parents and their tribes deserve better. Judge Davis, for example, removed Indian children from their families in 100% of the cases before him. So let's explore these defendants. Chief Judge Jeffrey Davis. He was the presiding judge of the 7th Circuit Court of Pennington County. This means that he's the very top judge who oversaw everyone else. He sets the policies and procedures for Pennington County and makes sure that everything happening in Pennington County is according to law. All of the 7th Circuit judicial colleagues must follow Judge Davis's policies and procedures. Now let's look at Mark Vargo. He was the elected state's attorney for Pennington County, South Dakota, meaning that he was elected by a general election. His staff attorneys, because he's head over all of the state attorneys in Pennington County, they have to appear before a judge, either Judge Davis or some of the other 7th Circuit judges, in order to remove these Native American Indian children from their families and place them into foster care. Mr. Vargo has an obligation to follow federal and state law and to advocate the state's position and also to uphold justice at all times. Sounds pretty good, right? Now, these obligations are independent from the judicial function that Judge Davis does. However, Mr. Vargo controls all of the policies and procedures followed by his staff attorneys in Pennington County. Lynn Valenti is the secretary of the South Dakota Department of Social Services. Her office is in Pierre. Luann Van Hoonick is the person in charge of DSS for Pennington County, South Dakota. Now, the Child Protective Services employees are under the policy guidance and supervision of Ms. Valenti and Ms. Hoonick. They must prepare a petition for temporary custody and sign under oath of perjury that an Indian child is at risk of serious injury if the child remains in their parents' home without having an immediate state child protective services step in and remove the child. They also must sign an affidavit for the Indian Child Welfare Act. What Judge Viken found during this extensive lawsuit is that Judge Davis and all the other defendants failed to protect the fundamental rights of parents, both to a fair hearing and also by not following federal and state law in the removal process. They refused to allow the parents to confront and cross-examine DSS witnesses in the 60-second to 5-minute hearings to remove their children. The defendants failed by using documents as a basis for the court decisions, which were not given to the parents and which were not received into evidence at the 48-hour hearings. The Judge Viken found that all the plaintiffs, all the Native Americans, the Oglala Sioux and the Rosebud tribe, were entitled to judgment as a matter of law on their due process clause claims for the state failing to follow both federal and state law. So what happened to these defendants? Well, Judge Davis was not impeached like the law required. In fact, instead of being impeached, he was simply demoted. Judge Davis was stripped of his title as presiding judge of the Seventh Circuit in May 2015, but he insists that this move had absolutely nothing to do with this case and his failure to follow and uphold both federal and state law, but rather that it was because of Chief Justice David Gilbertson. Mark Vargo wasn't apprehended for violating the law. Instead, he was appointed by Governor Noem to interim South Dakota Attorney General. He was rewarded for his failure to follow and uphold justice and violations of both South Dakota and federal law by being promoted to the very top position in the state. However, now, after a full career, Mark Vargo has announced that he's resigning and taking a job to work on establishing the rule of law in Southeast Asia. So in Pennington County, Mark Vargo goes out of his way to oppress ethnic minority groups and destroy families, and he was convicted in a court of law that he has failed to uphold the law, and yet now he's moving to Southeast Asia. Len Valente, a peer, was promoted to the Secretary of the Department of Social Services, the top position in the state for her. And Valente also hypocritically said that she will work diligently to assist South Dakota families to be safe. Luann Van Hoenek has removed herself from 100% all findings on the internet. She has spent extra money to make sure that she's not to be found, and it is unknown where she's currently at. So Kristi Noem's Pennington County, that she herself said she oversees, is perverted. Perverted definition is corrupt, turned from what is right, wicked, misguided, and distorted. They have also all been found in a court of law to be white supremacist, a person who believes that white people constitute a superior race and that should therefore dominate society, typically to the exclusion or detriment of other racial and ethnic groups. Now, instead of fixing the problem after the Judge Viken found that all of these public officials had intentionally violated the law 100% of the time, nothing happened. They all got promotions. So it continues to run rampant. And we're going to explore this in detail with case after case after case, proving that what I'm saying is correct. So Governor Noem is not for the people. She's not for the people of South Dakota, and she's definitely not for the people of America. Governor Noem is for white supremacists. Governor Noem is not for Christians. She is not for families. She is not for a healthy, safe state. She is aware of every illegal happening in Pennington County, and she has intentionally turned her head, and she, by her silence and then promoting the very people that have committed these crimes to the highest positions in the state, she is condoning and allowing these to happen. Governor Noem has failed the people of South Dakota through refusing to uphold the South Dakota Constitution. I am asking the people of South Dakota to hold Governor Noem accountable to her oath, to enforce compliance with the state constitution and laws which the people of South Dakota have voted to enact, and to step in and correct this problem. In the future presentations, we're going to explore what exactly am I talking about? What exactly has happened? Why is this of such utmost importance? Why are publicly appointed officials to be held accountable to practice within the confines of the law? And why aren't they impeached, which is simply removing them from the position of authority that they're holding. And by law, they are forever banned from holding another public office because of their refusal to uphold both the state laws and Constitution. How are Governor Noem and Chief Justice Jensen both required to remove from office a person found to be violating the state's Constitution? In these upcoming presentations, we're going to prove how the people of South Dakota established the law, how judges have no authority except to uphold this established law. We'll explore what the due process of law is and how it is violated every single day by the 7th Circuit Court and the South Dakota Supreme Court. Now, earlier in the lawsuit that I was talking about, where the ACLU came to bat and petitioned that the rights of American Indian families be upheld equally, same as every other family, it doesn't sound like it was that big of a affront. It doesn't sound like it was that big of an injustice. However, you will learn it was over 800 children that were forcefully removed from their families in just a few years' time. So when you compare that to and understand, you will be blown away that you now have not a democracy in the state of South Dakota, but you have a dictatorship. And the state will come in, take away your business, take away your house, destroy your family, anything if you stand in their way. We will prove how honest people are repeatedly imprisoned for speaking out, and I am one of them. Stay tuned as story after story of injustice involving these exact same departments unfolds. I would like to relay that this is a privately funded public exposure of the perverted judicial system in Pennington County, and there's a reason I'm doing this. It's because I have lived through this injustice myself for the last 6 years, and every single statement that I make is backed by facts. It's proven in transcripts, which are sworn testimony under oath in a court of law. It is proven by lawsuit after lawsuit, and you will be able to see and make a decision for yourself. However, it does cost money, and so we are requesting donations to fight this as you feel led, because I firmly believe that when the general citizen of South Dakota understands what's happening in their state, that they will rise up and demand that Governor Noem she has to abide by the law. Every judge that's elected has to abide by the law. And so this is justice for South Dakota, and we are demanding justice in 2024. Stay tuned for further episodes.